What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the Man Listen Show. Before we get started, let's hear a few words from our sponsors. Please buy the new book by Erika Nicole Moore, Diabolical Tales of Woe. Diabolical Tales of Woe is a thrilling collection of short horror stories that leave you in an excited trepidation to see what will happen next. Prepare to face one horrific encounter after the next in this captivating novel. You can find this book on Amazon in the Kindle and paperback version. That is Diabolical Tales of Woe by Erika Nicole Moore.
I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% black all the time. Please follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. You can also find the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. Please share the show and make sure you use the hashtag ManListen. I'm your host, Mark B. Let me go ahead and introduce the crew. Erika, what's up with you?
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. C, what's up?
Hey, what's good?
Doing good. And Brother Lab is not with us tonight. We'll send a shout out to him and keep it moving. But on today's show, we're going to talk about a very important topic. We're going to discuss COVID-19, also known to many as the coronavirus. This new virus and disease was unknown before the outbreak began in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. The disease has now gained a foothold on every continent except Antarctica. One of the most impacted locations for this disease is in Italy, where the number of positive cases and deaths have steadily risen. The World Health Organization has declared this outbreak a global pandemic. The organization's chief stated that they are deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. At the time of this recording, the case count for the United States is now over 1,200. We on the Man Listen Show want to enlighten, enrich, and empower all of our supporters and listeners. So we brought in one of the most brilliant minds I know to break this down so we all can understand and be prepared for the days to come. Dr. Shani Davis, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, no problem. Now, you've been on the show before, but for those who did not catch the first show that you were on, please give the audience a brief breakdown of your education experience and what you're doing in the Tampa, Florida area with your clinic.
Thank you again for having me. I am Dr. Shani Davis. I am a nurse practitioner and certified diabetes educator. That's our previous title. We're actually have changed our name to better reflect what it is that we do and the impact we make to diabetes care and education specialists. Though I do manage diabetes and other chronic diseases in my clinic called Your Best You, Personalized Primary Diabetes Specialty Care, we are a full-service primary care practice, and we accept most major insurances.
Now, where can they find you on the internet?
On the internet, you can find me at ybykclinic.com or yourbestyoukclinic.com. On Facebook, Your Best You Clinic. On Twitter, Your Best You 502. And by phone, 813-936-2609.
Okay, and give them an address, because we got listeners in Florida too.
Oh, we do. Look at me. I got to do better at marketing, right? I am located conveniently, nice Metro North Tampa area, 15511 North Florida Avenue in Suite 502. That's where our Twitter hook came from, suite number 502. Our logo is a beautiful lotus of green, blue, and orange calming colors. Our office atmosphere is spa-like. We actually have statements of positive affirmation all over the wall, some prophetic and some that resonate as down home as "Don't Stop, Get It," and
All
by
right.
Uncle Luke. And that's actually one of the favorite signs in our lobby. So we are again at 15511 North Florida Avenue, conveniently located in North Tampa. Most major insurances are accepted, and we're taking new patients.
Don't Stop, Get It by the great Negro poet Luther Campbell, right?
Indeed, indeed.
Yep. So anyway, now we're talking about the coronavirus. Now, I want to ask you a few questions, starting off with this. Now, this outbreak has been widely referred to as the coronavirus by many people. You know how we put names on things. But the actual name for this virus is COVID-19. Can you clear up for the listeners why there are two names and what they signify?
Absolutely. Well, the corona virus is more or less a group of viruses. Coronavirus is just a generic name, and this group of viruses is named such because under a microscope, a very powerful one, obviously, the virus itself looks like a crown. It has spikes all over. You may have seen some of these ominous looking pictures on the internet as we've come to know more about the coronavirus, but it has spikes all over. It looks like a crown. Therefore, the group of viruses bearing this shape, they're called the coronaviruses. The virus group itself can affect humans and affect animals, and usually there is no overlap with that. There are different categories, alpha, beta, gamma, delta type, but these are more laboratory-like names. The coronavirus that's affecting us and is the focus of this current pandemic is COVID-19, which is essentially coronavirus 19 because of the year that we came to know about it.
So now everybody should be on alert about this disease and virus, but is there any segment in particular that should take extra precaution to prevent contracting this disease?
All should take the precautions to prevent the spread of this communicable disease and any communicable disease. But the segment that is at greatest risk for having an adverse outcome as a result of the infection is anyone that has an existing chronic disease. If you think about it, well, first of all, a chronic disease is one that has no cure. If you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have COPD, if you have, heart failure, those are things that can be managed and treated almost to normal range, but they essentially don't go away in the body. When the immune system is tied up with another disease state for whatever reason, it's less available to cover and produce antibodies and fight anything oncoming. So anyone with a chronic disease, anyone that has an immune suppressive type condition, HIV, AIDS, anyone who has undergone cancer treatment, radiation treatment, these things that compromise the immune system, anyone under high or very significant stress, those things, again, tie up the immune system so it's not as available to fight and recognize invading organisms. So those persons in those conditions are at greatest risk.
Okay. So how does this differ from the flu or the common cold? Because you see a lot of people talk about more people die from the flu than the coronavirus, but I'm assuming that more people get the flu than have, contracted the coronavirus. So how does it differ in terms of symptoms and how it affects you long term?
Well, the symptoms are very similar to the common flu. Certainly there's the fever, there's the malaise, there is shortness of breath. But the degree apparently of shortness of breath with the coronavirus is the most profound difference between it and a general viral infection. per se. Persons, they tend to get worn down. Sometimes, you've heard someone say that, oh man, I got the flu and it just put me down. So a loss of energy and inability to participate in your activities of daily living, profound fever, shortness of breath, cough, those types of symptoms is what you'd see with the coronavirus. The difference between it and a regular flu, our body hadn't seen anything like this. Our immune system is completely unfamiliar with this virus. Therefore, we don't have the faculties to fight it. Our body is trying to fight it and develop antibodies to rid itself of it at the same time. So while this is happening, of course, your most important areas, your heart, your respiratory system, and areas of your body that work involuntarily, they shut down a little. Your function goes to just those necessary functions in the body, and you are tired and get achy as a result of that. The fever comes about again as the body's way of trying to combat and fight an unknown organism. But these things happen that are different from the standard flu infection because it's an unfamiliar organism.
So a lot of people are changing up like how they travel. I mean, I know I was supposed to be on a cruise at this time, but I definitely changed those plans. I know Rika, you got a trip planned, right?
Yeah, man, I'm going to Cuba. I don't care what they say, I'm going.
Are you supposed to be going to Cuba? Do you want to announce that on the internet? Isn't that illegal?
Yeah, what?
No, it's not legal to go to Cuba
anymore. No. You got to do it the right way. You got to have a purpose and stuff. So
I got
but
you.
No, that's fine.
And
they have 0 cases.
Yeah, here I am. Here I am. I'm dry snitching on you. My bad on that one. But cruises been canceled. We just received word that the NBA has suspended its season indefinitely due to a player testing positive for the disease. And, of course, President Trump just announced at the time of this recording that there's going to be a 30-day travel ban to most of the countries from Europe. Dr. Davis, we've seen a lot of people joking about this. Like, you see a lot of memes about corona and a lot of people not taking it seriously. Is this something that you think is being overblown, or do you think that we should be very cognizant and vigilant about this particular disease?
Oh, it is not being overblown at all. We should be very conscious and have those preventive type behaviors, in the forefront, no matter what we're, dealing with. You could be dealing with, just a regular cold or the standard flu. The precautions that keep you safe are those that should be observed in preventing and lowering the chance that coronavirus can spread. A little bit extra does need to be done. However, you say you're not going on a cruise ship. That's a very smart thing to do. Everything that everyone comes in contact with on that floating vessel is shared. Okay, so the chance that everyone will walk off with some bit that came from their neighbor, a microorganism on the skin, a microorganism from the air is pretty high. To be in close quarters with people is a very high risk factor when it comes to chances of incurring the virus. But ordinary precautions as well. If you're sick, let's say it's a common cold, you're not, in people's faces. You do try to distance yourself at work. You don't, go to large populated areas because these are opportunities for the virus to spread. This is, just sort of common sense. So are we overreacting? No, we're not overreacting because, again, no one's immune system is ready for this. If your immune system is strong, it may mean that you may not be hospitalized. You may be able to recover just from a period of convalescence for 2 weeks or whatever in your home. But who have you come into contact with? What about your neighbor's immune system? Okay, there's a neighborhood in New York where there are over 100 cases that has essentially burgeoned just over this past week.
Yeah, and there's New Rochelle, New York.
Yeah, that area there. Yeah, and there's an attorney that basically just came from a trip, went to his office, went to synagogue, went to a store, felt bad, went to the hospital, And, the next couple of days, hundreds of people have been affected. Everyone in his home is affected, and people that they come into contact with likewise are affected. Some people are, again, recovering almost with minimal symptoms in their home, but it's those persons that are over 65, those persons with chronic disease, those persons that have conditions with immunocompromise that are less fortunate and are actually succumbing to the virus.
So I'm one of those probably really rare people that really feels like overpopulation is a problem. So when situations like this happen, I feel like, and I know it sounds terrible, but I think that overpopulation and what we're doing to the earth is a reason why we have these type of pandemics popping up. Do you think that maybe it's because there are so many people in China and those areas that the population levels impact how rapidly it spread through those areas?
Yes, but this is the most superficial yes that I can give you. Your question sounds more like, do I feel that natural selection is putting its hand in the earth and things like that? Maybe, but that that's on God, you just kind of work with things that you can control and explain. However, if everyone took the same care as, let's say, I do, I'm a little bit of a germaphobe, so yeah, I don't touch anything when I'm out in a public space. Essentially, my hands are closed. When I'm on an escalator or something, it's the back of my hand that rests on the banister for safety. I don't open my hand to, I'll hug or whatnot, but I very rarely shake hands. And when I do shake hands, I'm in the bathroom washing hands with soap and water immediately. But that's me. Not everyone has those habits. And it's little things like flipping through a magazine, licking your finger as you turn to page for a little bit of moisture, opening a door with a doorknob that a million people have touched, and then taking your glasses off and rubbing your eyes. It's being, so busy at work, getting on public transportation, holding a pole, holding a rail, then getting some street food and eating, licking your fingers. So these terrible habits that regular, people have are things that actually contribute to the spread of coronavirus and other communicable diseases. Living in close quarters, that's a risk factor for things like, tuberculosis, also, or even ringworm. So other communicable diseases are just spread that way. Coronavirus, natural selection. Again, I don't know the answer to that. Coronaviruses, when they were first found, there were some that affected humans, and then there were some that affected animals. Strangely, in our not so remote history, some of these viruses came from animals and mutated to affect humans. And in the case of COVID-19, that's, wreaking havoc on the world right now. Another coronavirus that began in animal populations but mutated to affect humans was SARS. SARS was a coronavirus, and we had those scares around, I believe, about 2008. So this isn't that novel, but the fears and the effect on the world and in our health is the same.
So where do you think we will be 6 months or a year from now? Like Arika brought up, like the virus is rapidly spreading, and they're saying that it's airborne. So with it being airborne, I know they just canceled, like Marv said earlier, the NBA season. I imagine MLB season's not going to start next month as planned. And I know at my employer, we've actually canceled all of our face-to-face meetings for now. So are they coming up with some type of, I guess, like a shot, or like how do you feel like the U.S. is going to get a hold on this?
Oh, wow. That is a very complex and layered question. We are in an election year. And remember that our current president and his administration cut a lot of funding for public health research. And that does include research for stuff just like the coronavirus at the CDC. So we are playing a little bit of catch up in terms of managing this from a federal standpoint, but it does seem that states have picked up the baton and implementing measures to screen, to prevent mass widespread disbursement of the virus by, issuing like moratoriums on public events, putting up more hand washing and sanitizer stations, making masks available to sick persons when they come into healthcare facilities, instituting protocols, helping to make the public aware, all of these things to prevent the spread of the virus and to protect those that are most vulnerable. These are our elderly. These are persons with immunocompromised conditions and chronic disease. So the approach right now is prevention. In 6 months, again, that's difficult to say in an election year because you need money. They are working on a vaccine, but you can't produce these things overnight. A vaccine is about at minimum 18 months down the road.
Yeah, and I've seen the effects. Like I said, I was supposed to go on a cruise, but I did still travel. A lot of the meetings that I have scheduled for my day job were canceled. Telecommuting has been encouraged, and there hasn't been any travel restrictions put in place yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, which I'm A-okay with, because for people that are professional and in positions that we have, most of us, we're able to perform our duties through email, through telephone. We don't have to be face-to-face with customers. But the concern that I have is for those people who aren't able to make a living in that way. We just received notice that several universities, they are suspending classes after spring break, and they are transitioning into doing everything online. And I've seen that at several other universities in the news, and they're taking the precautions to try to limit the outbreak of the disease and the virus on college campuses. Because like you said, Dr. Davis, the close quarters, in the dormitories and just being on campus with, thousands of people, it can spread real fast and real quick. So, but I am concerned about those who aren't able to just say, I'm going to stay at home and work. And I think that we also need to be cognizant of, what if they shut down the schools? Like there are children who go to school, and the breakfast and lunch that they receive at school, that's the meal that they eat for the day. So I think that the impact of this disease could really be more widespread than we think in terms of just the economic impact that it can have, the social impact that it can have, and obviously the health impact that it can have as well. Dr. Davis, what do you think?
I completely concur with you. Well beyond the impact of health, the ripple effect in schools. Yeah, there are people that have to clean the schools, and this is really a blue collar effect. As you indicated, persons that have professional roles oftentimes can work remotely. But what about those that rely on the check and have to physically be present to do their job? And if they're not there, they don't get a check. There will be an economic hit taken by those families. Also, when it comes to travel, don't forget, just because you're not going on the cruise, you're safe. But the people who are employed by the cruise ship, that's work for them. The people who clean the cruise ship, the people who fuel the cruise ship, those things, there will be ripple effects all across the nation, across multiple areas of finance, social networks, and the way we interact and just conduct our activities of daily living. Another example, you're there in Texas, or at least are from Texas, big Southwest Festival that's usually in Austin.
Yeah, South by Southwest in Austin. Yep.
Yeah.
We had plans on going to that to promote the show, but it was canceled.
Canceled. Millions of dollars won't be realized by the Austin community because of coronavirus.
Right.
So, absolutely.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm disappointed in is the delay and the reaction by our government to this disease. I think that our president, with it being election year, like you mentioned, a big part of that is everyone's 401k and how the stock market is doing. And when the concerns and the fears came with the disease as it continued to spread, and you saw how the stock market was impacted, because my 401k is getting murdered right now. But I think once that it started hitting people's pockets, it became more real. And now we're seeing some of the measures that are put in, and we'll see how they affect us. I mean, one of the things that President Trump talked about was the travel ban, right? And Arika and I were talking about this before the show. It wasn't to every European country, but it was to many of the what was it, Arika? Every European country except for the UK.
Yep.
Yeah, except for the UK. And another measure that he talked about was putting the Small Business Administration, opening up funds to them so that small businesses like Your Best You Clinic, who may be impacted by this, they can get those funds to use to make sure that they stay afloat and that they keep going. So the one concern I have about this is, how is this going to affect the Black community? Because measures could be put into place, and we've seen measures put into place, but it's how it's executed, right? And are we going to be allowed access to that? Now, I'm going to bring this back to this, you being a medical provider, Dr. Davis. It's often said when America gets the cold, Black America gets the flu. Do you see this having a more adverse impact on the Black community at all?
I believe that the Black community will be more affected peripherally by the downstream effects of coronavirus than directly, because this is a communicable disease. We generally don't know a whole bunch of people that have been to Italy and Egypt and China. So it may not affect our circle directly. However, if we are, let's say we work in San Francisco in the hospitality arena, we may come in contact with persons like that. So small scale from direct contact. However, there are things like church. Right. A church gathering is a gathering of more than 250 people. My church is anyway. Right. We don't have that moratorium, but we have to think about how Black people fellowship. How do they get together and cope and even get their information? The church in the Black community is seen as an epicenter of information. So the virus could be a factor that keeps people from going to church and fellowshipping and congregating as they usually do. That can result in some depression if that affects their ability to, cope and deal and decision make. Then again, I believe the effects will be downstream from coronavirus on the Black community economically, more so than from the perspective of health, just given the exposure type that puts persons at greatest risk. Right. I will say, however, to the degree that we are affected by chronic disease, if we are in contact with someone who's affected or in proximity or a community of persons that are affected by the coronavirus, then the same things such as access to health, physical and economically, will result in adverse effects of the coronavirus from that health perspective. Yeah. So primarily downstream and in secondary.
Yeah, so all those folks that go to Bedside Baptist, they're probably straight.
Bedside Baptist.
They'll probably be okay. But I'll tell you this, as I was traveling and I was in the airport, and this will probably speak to how nasty men are. I've never seen so many men washing their hands in the restroom as I have during this outbreak. I mean, it really stood out to me that, the hand washing and just the general sanitary approach that we're all supposed to take anyway. Like Dr. Davis talked about how she approaches things. You're starting to see people take it more seriously. So that really stood out to me.
But you know what, though? I was so pissed when I went to Target and all the hand soap was gone. Like, my first thought was, have you guys not been washing your hands this whole time? Like, why are all the little hand soap bottles gone? Why can't you just buy the replenisher bottle? Why aren't those gone?
Hey,
like,
Listen,
It doesn't even make any sense.
if it helps limit the spread of this thing, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But another piece, just going back to what we're talking about, how we could be more adversely impacted by this thing, price gouging. Cause I ain't gonna lie, at first I saw people walking around with masks, and I went on the Amazon. And I bought some masks for like $40 that probably during normal conditions would be like $10. But I was like, hey, better to have and not need than need to not have. But I think that's another thing that we got to take into consideration in terms of price gouging, because that does happen to our community, on a pretty frequent basis. But
I noticed that everybody was buying up the mask, but I think they have to be a certain level for it to even work.
They do.
So, last question, Dr. Davis. You as a medical provider, what would you suggest to your patients? And as you told us in the intro, a lot of your patients are being treated for chronic conditions. And a lot of people in the Black community are suffering from chronic conditions, like myself. I have hypertension. What would you suggest to your patients and to people like myself to be the most practical way of approaching life and remaining safe, but still living your life? Because, we had people, canceling trips, canceling meetings, but I think that we still have to live life to a certain degree, but we still have to be practical in our approach to how we live life. So you as a medical provider, what would be your suggestion to one of your patients or somebody like myself?
Wash your hands. Stop touching everything and everyone, and keep your hands out your face and mouth. All of those really basic things. In times when people are really sick, don't be all up in people's face. So keep a nice social distance. Be, like 6 feet away, not just your normal 3 feet, but remain about 6 feet away from people. Cover your mouth with your elbow, the inner part of your elbow when you have to cough or sneeze. And if people are in close quarters to you, to only go in close quarters with people during these times if it's absolutely necessary. Because again, you're increasing the likelihood that you'll breathe in someone else's air. So there are very common sense approaches. If you are, at a keyboard, don't eat at your keyboard because there's a lot of touching going on there. You don't want to be putting things in your mouth. I mentioned about licking the fingers and turning the page. All of those are just awful habits. So what I recommend for my patients is just the common sense stuff. Wash your hands. Use sanitizer. Keep your hands out of your face. And stay a safe distance from people unless it's absolutely necessary that you're closer than about 6 feet.
A reminder for people. I think a lot of us forget, or most of us might not even know that for those of us that have friends and family that are in jail, toiletries and stuff like that are not given to them for free. They have to buy those things with their commissary or earn money to buy sanitary napkins, tissue, soap, all of that stuff. So if you have someone in those close quarters at jail, you might want to consider putting a little extra on their books so that they can get some soap, sanitizer, whatever they need too.
Yeah, we saw recently with the news in Mississippi, the deplorable conditions that a lot of these prisons are in, and the people that are in these prisons, the conditions that they're dealing with, and it's somewhat inhumane. And I'm sure that the situation that happened in Mississippi isn't unique, and so definitely we need to keep all of us who are in the community in mind, and like Arika said, make sure that they are given the basic necessities to make sure that they are protecting themselves and being treated in a humane way. Like I said, I think that the possibility of it affecting our community in a very real way due to systematic racism and oppression is very real. But I think that we can definitely do our part by listening to our experts, our providers like Dr. Davis. We wanted to make sure that we did our part in helping to educate all of our listeners, and hopefully everyone shares this to make sure that we accomplish that goal. So, Dr. Davis, before we end, go ahead and tell people where they can find you one more time.
Thank you so much again for inviting me onto the Man Listen show. It's always a pleasure to hear the perspectives of you and our other professionals here. You can find me in the beautiful Tampa, Florida at 15511 North Florida Avenue, Suite 502, and online at yourbestyouclinic.com, on Twitter, YourBestYou502, and on Facebook, Your Best You Clinic. And always you can call us at 813-936-2609.
Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate you. And everybody, make sure that you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. You can also listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, basically everywhere you can find your podcast. We'll holler at you next time. Stay safe, everybody. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.